Now, AEW hyped all week that Tony Khan would have an important announcement to make on Wednesday's Dynamite. On their social media, they promoted it as a huge announcement. That was the word they used, huge. We know how much Tony Khan loves his major announcements. He announced his purchase of Ring of Honor on television, which I think would qualify as big news. He announced the creation of the TBS Championship. Remember the leveling up of the All-Atlantic title to the international title, which that was not a major announcement. The first Forbidden Door, which was a big deal, right? Doing a joint pay-per-view in New Japan. He announced the debut of their all-access reality show, which was that was kind of a dud. He said he had a blockbuster announcement about a new AEW program. That was Collision, and yes, that was a big deal. Adding a new live weekly show. One that was supposed to be anchored by CM Punk, which it was, until it wasn't. I would say that's a big deal. So I'm not saying that most of these weren't important announcements to the company, but there are ways to make these announcements without hyping them all up for a ratings grab, which is all this was. That's all this announcement was on Wednesday. Pure and simple. And the way it was promoted, it was a cheap rating stunt. It was Tony Khan standing in the bag with Nigel McGuinness, putting over their Wembley Stadium show and announcing that tickets for next year's All In, which is almost a year away, will be going on sale on December 1st. And fans can get early access to tickets by signing up for the pre-sale. Tickets going on sale next month for a show next August is not a huge announcement. I don't care what country that show is running in. Believe me, I would keep that same energy if it was for a show here in the States, just as much as I would for one in the UK or anywhere else. WWE just announced its first ever PLE from Germany, right? Which is also next August, actually the week after All In. Did they add to the Raw preview or the SmackDown preview that week that Triple H would have a major announcement to make? No. Partially because it was already announced earlier in the day. But no, they didn't do that. They had Michael Cole during the show that night mention it. That's what they should have done here. Announcing the first Wembley Stadium show on television, that would have been a big deal. Announcing a streaming deal for their pay-per-views and their entire library and maybe Ring of Honor too, that would be a big deal. Announcing a big free agent signing coming soon to AEW television, that would be a big deal. This was not a big deal. And these constant big announcements are just a parody at this point. But I want to stay on the subject of Tony Khan here just for a few minutes. Because all I have seen all week long, now that episode of Dynamite on Wednesday, I didn't like that episode. Definitely one of the weaker shows that they have done. But coming out of that show, there seems to be this pile-on effect going on social media. I'm seeing it mostly on Twitter. I can't vouch for TikTok or any of these other platforms that are out there that I don't pay as much attention to. But on social media, from what I've been seeing all week long, there were people talking almost in a doomsday fashion about the fate of AEW after, this episode of Dynamite on Wednesday and some of Tony Khan's recent booking. All of the doomsday discourse on social media that I have seen. And I chimed in and I said this. I said one bad episode or one boring episode. And then I had AEW fans attacking me for this, by the way. What are you talking about, a bad episode? That was a great episode of Dynamite. There was a lot of story on that episode. No, it was a bad episode of Dynamite. If you don't like it, tough shit. One bad or boring episode of Dynamite does not mean that AEW is dead. Or 2 or 3. Do you know how many fucking terrible episodes of Raw that I have sat through over the years? There was a period 4 or 5 years ago where that show was as bad as it has ever been. And they should know better because they've been doing this a hell of a lot longer than AEW has. Now, I agree that Tony Khan has made a lot of questionable decisions, questionable booking decisions, questionable hiring decisions. But to listen to some of the commentary that I have been hearing from other content creators and from randos online, you would think that AEW has one foot in the grave. They should just fold up shop right now. Board up the doors. Cody Rhodes leaving AEW was a big loss, especially in hindsight. That was a big loss for AEW. Brawl Out and the chaos and the drama that resulted from it was a punch to the gut that AEW still has not completely recovered from. And I made this point the other day. Triple H gaining more creative power in WWE absolutely took away one of AEW's major talking points, that they were the alternative to WWE. And some of the garbage that Vince McMahon was spoon-feeding people for years. WWE still has a lot of booking problems. The repetitive interference in matches, the distraction finishes, that stuff hasn't gotten much better. But the product is overall better now than it was when Vince McMahon had his thumb on everything. And using Vince McMahon as the big bad wolf, it just doesn't work anymore. The boogeyman is gone. We all know how these horror movies go, right? The boogeyman always comes back. But for now, the boogeyman is gone. It doesn't mean that AEW can't position themselves as an alternative anymore. They can still do that. But they gotta put the work in because they have a lot of work to do on that front. They feel less like an alternative and more like WWE Light sometimes. Especially in a week where I see Ric Flair back on television, or Ric Flair has signed a multi-year deal, and then I see The Big Show back on television, standing there barely able to move. Now with him, it's one match. It's a tag match. But just the perception is not good. You've got Jeff Jarrett on television. You've got 60-year-old Billy Gunn as a champion. Christian Cage is TNT champion right now, but Christian is also doing the best work of his career right now, so I can excuse that. I would not say the same for any of these other people. Adam Copeland, he's had all of one match so far, but again, the perception is there that they're just bringing in all the old guys when they have this surplus of younger talents that are not being featured in a way that a lot of people would like to see them be featured. It's great that they have their world title on MJF. He's the crown jewel of that company. Sheeta is their women's champion. We got Timeless Toni Storm. She's great. I love it. Ricky Starks and Big Bill are the tag team champions. Great. Chris Statlander is the TBS champion. Terrific. Although she needs a better story than just being she's on the periphery of a story with Willow and Sky Blue and Julia Hart. They have to do better than that. I saw on Collision last night, Jake the Snake Roberts was back on television. He has formed his own little army with Lance Archer and the Righteous. May as well, since they weren't doing shit with Archer anyway. Maybe that could be something. I don't understand how you have Darby Allin last night with a bad shoulder, which they have acknowledged on television, still beating Lance Archer. You can't even give Archer a win when the guy half his size is hurt coming into the match. I mean, I get that Darby has a pay-per-view match coming up and Archer doesn't, but that's just ridiculous. And then his manager announces, immediately after, his manager takes the mic and announces that he has a new group, right? Some great momentum there you just gave them. It's that type of booking that is just puzzling to me. But there are people on that roster who are not doing anything. They're barely even being rotated in and out. Tony Khan needs to do a better job of that. One of the things that some people complain about when it comes to AEW is the number of foreign talents or wrestlers from other promotions that they bring in to do TV. To do these supposed dream matches, right? Not everything is a dream match, but that is one benefit that AEW has over WWE. WWE does not play well with others. They exist in their own little world. You'll never see a forbidden door with WWE. I like the idea that AEW is willing to partner and work with other promotions. Forbidden Door is a fun show. But Forbidden Door loses some of its appeal when it feels like every week is Forbidden Door on AEW television. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel so special anymore. And you end up with a lot of people on TV with no build. In some cases, the fans don't really know who they are. They wrestle one match and then they vanish. There has to be a better balance there. But that's one of the characteristics that differentiates AEW from WWE. When we see matches with constant interference and distractions, you're no longer the alternative. You're a cheap copy. So yes, there are improvements that need to be made, and I hope they get made. These are things that can be fixed. Will they be? I don't know. That's not up to me. That's up to Tony Khan. But for the love of God, enough with all of the Doomsday stuff. It's fucking embarrassing.